Commentary on John 2:13-22. This passage records the cleansing of the temple during the Passover season, presenting a decisive moment that reveals both the identity of Christ and the imminent transition from the old covenant order to a new and living reality. Verses 13-14. The setting, Passover and the temple system. The scene opens with the Passover at hand, drawing multitudes to Jerusalem. The temple, intended as the central place of worship, had become saturated with commercial activity, oxen, sheep, doves, and money changers operating within its courts. This was not merely inconvenience or distraction, it represented a distortion of the covenantal system. The sacrificial economy, which once pointed toward atonement, had become an entrenched institution. The presence of these transactions inside the temple highlights how the system had grown into something self-sustaining rather than anticipatory. The temple, originally a shadow, had become treated as the substance. Verses 15-16. The cleansing, authority, and judgment. The act of driving out the merchants is forceful and deliberate. The making of a whip of cords and the overturning of tables signals not uncontrolled anger, but judicial authority. This action is symbolic. It is not merely a correction of misuse, it is a sign of termination. The phrase, "Make not my Father's house an house of merchandise," reveals that what was once instituted by God had now been corrupted, and more significantly, was reaching its appointed end. The cleansing anticipates the removal of the entire temple system. What is being disrupted outwardly points to a deeper, covenantal upheaval. Verse 17. Zeal for the house. The disciples recall the scripture, "The zeal of thine house hath eaten me up." This citation frames the act not as rebellion, but fulfillment. The zeal is not for preserving the structure, but for fulfilling its purpose. The temple was never the final dwelling of God. It was a temporary arrangement pointing toward a greater reality. The consuming zeal reflects a commitment to bring that reality to completion, even at the cost of his own life. Verses 18-19. The sign, "Destroy this temple." The Jewish leaders demand a sign to validate such authority. The response given is enigmatic. "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." They interpret this statement in terms of the physical temple, referencing its long construction. However, the statement redirects attention away from the building entirely. The temple being spoken of is his body. This marks a profound shift from a physical structure made with hands to a living embodiment of God's presence. The authority to cleanse the temple is grounded in the authority to replace it. Verses 20-21. Misunderstanding and revelation. The misunderstanding of the leaders underscores their attachment to the visible system. Their focus remains on the external structure, while the deeper meaning eludes them. The clarification that he spoke of his body reveals that the true dwelling of God is no longer tied to stone and ritual, but to a person. The temple, as an institution, was already rendered obsolete in principle, even if not yet removed in history. Verse 22. Resurrection and understanding. After the resurrection, the disciples remember and believe. This indicates that the full meaning of these events could only be understood in light of the completed work. The raising of his body is the establishment of a new order, one not based on repeated sacrifices or mediated through a physical temple, but grounded in a finished and living reality. Summary insight. This passage is not merely about reforming temple practices. It is about replacing the entire system. The cleansing act serves as a prophetic declaration that the age of the temple was drawing to its close. The true temple is no longer a place, but a person, one in whom the fullness of God dwells. The resurrection confirms that access to God is no longer mediated through external structures, but through a completed work that stands independent of the old covenant framework. The disruption in the temple courts is therefore a sign of a greater transition, from shadow to substance, from anticipation to fulfillment, and from a system of continual offering to a reality that stands complete.